The snow had swallowed the road long before Elliot James realized how far he'd come from the last gas station. The pale beams of his car headlights sliced through the fog, like tired eyes refusing to stay open. He glanced at the map folded on the passenger seat. Cold Hollow wasn't on it, not on any of them. But locals in the nearest town, Maple Ridge, had whispered about it in hushed tones over coffee cups and cigarettes. They still see the lights there. One old man had told him, tapping his temple. Lanterns. They burn on their own when the sun goes down. Folks say it ain't safe to follow 'em. Elliot smiled politely back then, writing the words, "The Lanterns of Cold Hollow," in the margin of his notebook. It sounded like the kind of story that would make his editor stop calling him the Ghost Chaser. Just another small-town legend, he thought. Some folklore wrapped in snow. But the more he drove through the wilderness of Vermont's northern edge, the more he felt the quiet pressing down on him, like the woods were listening. By the time he saw the rusted sign, half buried in snow, the letters barely legible, it was almost midnight. Cold Hollow, Pop. No number, just question marks carved into the metal. He parked beside a wooden fence that leaned under the weight of years and frost. The engine's hum died, and for a moment the silence was absolute, a suffocating blanket that seemed to muffle even the sound of his heartbeat. He stepped out, camera hanging from his neck, breath clouding in the air. The cold was alive here, sharp, biting, whispering through the trees. His flashlight flickered once, then steadied, catching something ahead. 3 lanterns swaying gently from low tree branches, their flames burning steady despite the wind. Elliot frowned. "Hello," he called. His voice vanished into the night like it had been swallowed. He took a few cautious steps forward. The lanterns were old, black iron and glass, coated in frost, but the light inside was too strong, too steady. It wasn't fire, it was thicker, almost liquid. He raised his camera, snapped a photo, and the flash painted the trees white for a split second. When his eyes adjusted again, the lanterns were still burning, but there were footprints in the snow now. Fresh ones, not his. He turned, scanning the empty road, the skeletal trees, the fog curling at his feet. Anyone there? Nothing. Only the low creak of the branches overhead. He felt the sudden urge to get back into the car, drive back to Maple Ridge, and file this story as too damn weird. But curiosity, the same thing that had ruined his sleep for years, pulled him deeper into the woods. The air changed as he walked, colder, heavier, filled with a faint metallic smell like rust and old rain. He found himself staring at the lanterns again. They weren't just hanging. They were aligned, evenly spaced, marking a narrow path that wound deeper into the forest. A nervous laugh escaped him. "Well, if this isn't a setup for a horror movie," he muttered, pressing record on his handheld tape device. "This is Elliot James, Cold Hollow, Vermont, if that's even what this place is. 3 lanterns found burning in the snow. No visible fuel source. No sound. No!" The tape caught a soft sound. A breath. He froze, looking around. "Who's there?" The breath came again, just behind him this time. He spun, light flashing across empty woods. "Hello." Silence. He exhaled shakily and turned back to the lanterns. But now there were 4. He blinked, stepping closer, heartbeat thudding in his ears. No way! The new lantern swayed gently as if acknowledging him. He reached for it, and the moment his glove brushed the iron handle, the flame inside flared bright white. The snow beneath it hissed like it was melting, but when he jerked his hand back, his glove was covered in frost. He backed away, breathing hard. "Okay, Elliot, you got your picture. You got your tape. You're leaving." But when he turned, he couldn't see the road anymore. Only trees, stretching endlessly, every trunk identical, every shadow whispering the same low rhythm. "Don't turn around. Don't turn around!" He walked faster, then jogged, retracing what he thought was his path, until he saw the dim outline of a building through the fog. A weather-beaten wooden inn. Windows boarded up, except for one faint light. The sign swung above the door, letters fading with time. Hollow Rest Inn. Relief flooded him. Civilization, finally. He pushed the door open, a small bell jingling weakly above it. Inside smelled of old wood and kerosene. A single candle flickered on the front desk, beside a ledger thick with dust. Behind it, an old woman sat knitting, her eyes small and sharp behind round glasses. "You're not supposed to be here," she said, without looking up. Elliot forced a polite smile. "Yeah, I figured. Sorry for showing up unannounced. My car's out there on the road. I just need a room for the night, maybe a phone to call my editor." The woman finally lifted her gaze. Her eyes were pale grey, the kind that didn't blink often. "No phones work here. Haven't in years." She gestured toward the stairs. "There's a room upstairs if you must stay, but keep your curtains shut. And don't look at the lights." "The lights?" he asked. She gave a slow nod toward the frosted window. "When the church bell rings at midnight, the lanterns wake. Don't look at them, no matter what you hear. They'll follow your eyes, and once they see you, they don't stop until you belong to them." Elliot half smiled, trying to mask his unease. "That's quite the local story." The woman didn't smile back. "It's not a story, son. It's a warning." He took the key from her without another word, climbed the creaking staircase, and entered a narrow room lit by a single candle. Dust hung thick in the air, catching the flicker of light. He sat on the bed, rubbing his hands together to fight the cold, and pulled out his recorder again. "This is Elliot James," he whispered. "Cold Hollow Inn, midnight approaching. Locals claim the lanterns outside light up on their own. The innkeeper says not to look at them, which probably means I will." He chuckled under his breath, but it didn't sound convincing, even to him. The bell began to ring somewhere in the distance. Deep, heavy, echoing through the valley. Once, twice, thrice. He moved toward the window despite himself. The candle flickered violently, like trying to stop him. Outside, the snow glowed faintly. Then, one by one, lanterns lit across the trees. Hundreds of them, their light cold and unnatural. The whole forest looked alive, breathing with a ghostly rhythm. He couldn't look away. Something in that light was calling to him. Not a voice, not words, just a feeling. Recognition. He lifted the camera, snapped another photo. The flash reflected against the glass, and for a split second, he thought he saw faces inside the lanterns. Not reflections, faces. When the bell stopped, everything went dark again. The forest was silent. Elliot lowered the camera slowly. His breath trembled. He told himself it was exhaustion, nerves, imagination. But deep inside, a small voice whispered the truth. Something had seen him, and it was waiting for him to step outside. The next morning broke grey and silent. Frost coated the window like veins of silver, and the candle on the nightstand had burned down to a puddle of wax. Elliot blinked awake, throat dry, head heavy. For a moment, he thought he had dreamed it all. The bell, the lights, the faces inside the lanterns. But then he saw his camera lying on the desk. He switched it on. The photos from last night flickered across the tiny screen. Trees, snow, lanterns, each one glowing faintly, even though the flash should have overpowered them. And in one image, barely visible behind the glass, there was a shape. A hand pressed against the inside of a lantern's glass pane. Fingers, white as bone. Elliot stared for a long time before muttering to himself. Could be a trick of the light, but the words didn't sound convincing. Downstairs, the inn was empty, except for the soft ticking of an old clock and the faint smell of kerosene. The woman from last night wasn't there. The ledger was gone too. On the counter lay a photograph, black and white, edges curled with age. It showed the same woman, much younger, surrounded by half a dozen people in thick coats. Each one held a lantern, smiling proudly for the camera. Scrawled beneath the photo in fading ink were the words, "Lantern Festival, Cold Hollow, 1932. Elliot felt a chill crawl down his spine. That was more than 50 years ago. He flipped the photo over. On the back, someone had written one line in shaky handwriting. "The light keeps them here." He slid the photo into his notebook and stepped outside. The cold bit at his skin immediately. The inn looked even older in daylight. Wood warped, roof half collapsed. The road he'd come from was just a snow-covered trail now, swallowed by mist. He decided to explore the town, or what was left of it. The air carried no sound, except for his boots crunching against the frozen ground. There were maybe a dozen buildings scattered across the valley, a church with a broken bell tower, a general store leaning on its last nail, and a row of houses whose windows were boarded shut. Everything felt wrong. The snow should have been fresh, but footprints were everywhere, small, large, overlapping, like a crowd had passed through recently. And yet, there was no one. He switched on his recorder. Elliot James, Day 2 in Cold Hollow. The town looks abandoned, but there are signs of recent movement. I found an old photo mentioning a lantern festival in 1932. The innkeeper's missing. I'll check the church next. As he walked, he noticed something odd. The trees surrounding the town were charred at their bases, like they'd been burned long ago. In places, the snow had melted into black, glassy patches, where fire had scorched the earth. But there was no smell of ash, only that metallic tang again, faint but persistent, like rusted blood. The church stood at the center of town. Its steeple leaned, and its doors hung open. Inside, pews were overturned, hymn books scattered across the floor. At the front, an altar sat beneath a cracked stained glass window, depicting angels holding lanterns. The glass shimmered faintly, even in the weak daylight. Elliot approached, lifting his camera for a shot. That's when he noticed something strange, carved into the wood of the altar. Rows of names, hundreds of them, scratched deep into the surface. At the bottom of the list, almost worn away, he could make out one that hadn't aged like the rest. Margaret Hale. That was the woman from the inn. He traced the name with his glove, feeling the grooves. What the hell? A cold breeze slipped through the broken window, and for a moment, he swore he heard whispers. Soft, layered voices, speaking at once, too low to understand. He backed away, tripping over a fallen candle stand. His recorder clattered to the floor, still running. The whispering stopped. Then, faintly from somewhere outside, came the low toll of a bell. Once, twice. Elliot froze. It wasn't midnight. It wasn't even noon. He stumbled out of the church, heart hammering. Across the square, the inn's door was wide open, swinging gently. He hadn't left it like that. And from the eaves of the church, something dripped onto the snow, dark and slow. He looked up, expecting to see melting ice, but what fell wasn't water. It was red. He backed away, slipping on the snow, then turned and ran toward the small cemetery at the edge of town. Rows of weathered headstones poked through the frost. Their inscriptions faded, but one thing stood out. Every single grave had the same date of death, October 14th, 1932, and every single one was marked with a small carved lantern above the name. He knelt beside one of them, brushing the snow away. The name read Henry Lovelace. The same name had appeared in the photo from the inn. He looked around. They were all there, every smiling face from that photograph, buried together. His breath came fast, visible in the cold air. He lifted his camera, snapping pictures of the graves. The lens fogged instantly, as though the air itself didn't want to be recorded. A faint hum rose around him, low and unsteady, like wind whistling through hollow wood. It grew louder. Elliot turned slowly toward the trees. Lanterns, dozens of them, swaying in the daylight, their pale light cutting through the mist. The flames inside moved in sync, pulsing, almost breathing. "This isn't possible," he whispered, taking a step back. The recorder in his pocket hissed, static crackling. Then a voice emerged, a whisper layered over his own previous recording. "Don't look at them." Elliot's pulse spiked. "Who said that?" he shouted, scanning the empty cemetery. His breath came out ragged. The lanterns flickered once. Then, in unison, they went out. Silence fell again, thick and complete. He looked around. Nothing moved. No sound. No wind. Not even birds. He slowly exhaled, his muscles unclenching. Maybe it was some trick. Reflected light, his mind playing with exhaustion. He'd been awake for almost 30 hours. Then behind him, something shifted. A faint crunch of snow. He turned. A figure stood by the nearest grave. Tall, wrapped in heavy clothes that didn't fit the era. Its head tilted slightly, as if studying him. In one gloved hand, it held a lantern, the same kind as the others. "Hey," Elliot called, voice shaking. "Who are you?" The figure didn't move. Its face was shadowed under the hood, but he could feel its gaze, sharp and cold, cutting right through him. The lantern flame inside the glass guttered, then steadied. He took a cautious step closer. "I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm a journalist. The figure raised its other hand, a slow, deliberate motion, and pointed behind him. Elliot turned, and his blood froze. The graves he had photographed minutes ago were open, each one, soil freshly disturbed, coffins visible beneath the snow. He stumbled backward, pulse roaring in his ears. When he looked up again, the figure was gone. The only thing left was the lantern lying where it had stood, its flame burning silently. He approached it, crouching low. Inside, the flame twisted, stretching like it wanted to form shapes. For a heartbeat, he thought he saw a face in it. Eyes shut, mouth open in a silent scream. Elliot dropped the recorder beside it and staggered back toward the inn. The front door was still open, swaying in the wind. Inside, the candle on the counter had burned down to nothing. He slumped against the wall, breathing hard. "Get it together," he whispered to himself. "There's an explanation. There has to be." But his words trembled. Outside, the wind began to rise again, carrying the faintest echo of the bell. And somewhere in the distance, under the grey daylight, one single lantern reignited. Elliot woke up to darkness. His body ached, and for a few seconds, he couldn't remember where he was. The air was bitterly cold, the kind of cold that bites through clothes and skin and sinks into bone. His flashlight had gone out. The recorder lay beside him, the tape whirring faintly as if still alive. He fumbled for his phone. No signal, no battery. Outside, snow pressed against the windows like a living thing. The inn's walls creaked and moaned. Somewhere above him, a door opened and closed on its own. He forced himself to breathe evenly. "You're fine," he whispered, though his voice cracked. "You just passed out. Hypothermia, exhaustion, that's all." But then he heard the sound again, the distant toll of the bell. 3 times this time, slow, hollow. He froze. The clock on the wall read 12 car. Midnight. He got to his feet, clutching his camera like a weapon. The inn was dark, except for the faint orange glow flickering under the door to the hallway. He hesitated, then opened it. Candles lined the floor all the way down the corridor, their flames steady and tall, casting long trembling shadows on the peeling wallpaper. And at the far end stood the woman from the photograph, Margaret Hale. She looked exactly as she had before, but her skin was too pale, her eyes too glassy. She didn't blink. Elliot's voice was a whisper. "You're dead." Her head tilted slightly, as if the word amused her. "Everyone here is. she said softly. Her voice sounded distant, like it was echoing from the other side of a wall. You shouldn't have stayed. He took a step forward. What happened here? Margaret smiled faintly, her lips barely moving. We lit the lanterns to keep them out. The storm came early that year, but the fire spread faster than we thought. Everyone burned, Elliot. Everyone but me. Her eyes flicked toward the ceiling. The light kept their souls here. The lanterns were meant to protect us. Instead, they trapped us. Elliot's pulse hammered in his ears. And now? They want warmth, she said, her voice softening. They want to feel alive again. Every year, when the bell rings, they wake, and they need someone to keep the light burning. Elliot took a step back. No, I'm leaving. You can't. The candles around him flickered violently, their flames stretching toward him as if pulled by invisible strings. The hallway seemed to lengthen, walls breathing, floorboards groaning. He turned and ran. The front door of the inn was gone, just solid wall now, the wood rippling faintly like water. He hit it hard, but it gave nothing back. His breath came fast and shallow. Behind him, the candles went out one by one, swallowed by the dark. Then, a voice whispered right beside his ear, "Don't let the light die." He spun around. Margaret was gone. Only the faint orange glow from one remaining candle remained, sitting at the bottom of the stairs. Elliot snatched it up and stumbled toward the window. Outside, lanterns were hanging again, from trees, from poles, from invisible threads in the air. Their flames pulsed in rhythm, like a heartbeat. The bell began again. Once, twice, 3 times. He pressed his face to the glass, his breath fogging the pain. In the distance, at the edge of town, a figure stood beneath the church steeple. It was the same tall silhouette from the cemetery, holding a lantern high. Its flame flickered green now, sickly and bright. Then, slowly, every lantern in town turned the same color. Elliot's stomach dropped. The flame in his own candle flared violently, the wax running down his fingers. He dropped it with a cry. The moment it hit the floor, the light went out. The inn plunged into darkness. For a long moment there was nothing. No sound, no movement. Then, faintly, from somewhere beneath the floorboards, came the muffled sound of footsteps. Slow, deliberate, getting closer. He backed away, heart hammering, fumbling for his camera. He switched it on. The flash burst once, lighting up the room for an instant. In that instant, he saw them. Dozens of faces pressed against the walls, their outlines faintly visible beneath the wallpaper. Mouths open in silent screams. Their eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the camera flash. The light went out, and the room was black again. Elliot stumbled backward, crashing into a table. His hand brushed against the recorder. It was still running. He grabbed it, shouting into it, "They're inside the walls!" "There!" The recorder hissed, then went silent. The footsteps stopped. And then from behind him, a whisper, "You took their picture." He froze. Something cold brushed the back of his neck, like fingertips, light as smoke. He turned slowly. Nothing was there, but the air shimmered faintly, bending like heat haze. He raised his camera again, hand shaking. The flash went off. For half a second, he saw the room as it truly was. Blackened beams, ash-covered furniture, windows shattered, and standing in the corner, half-burned, were people. Their faces melted, their eyes hollow, lanterns hanging from their wrists by twisted wire. Then the light was gone. He dropped the camera, heart pounding so hard it hurt. A faint light flickered across the floor. One of the lanterns had rolled into the room from the hallway, its green flame hissing softly. Inside it, shapes moved like smoke, curling against the glass. Elliot backed away until his shoulders hit the wall. The lantern stopped moving. Then the voice came again, but this time it wasn't Margaret's. It was hundreds of voices overlapping, men, women, children, all whispering the same thing: stay. The lantern's glass cracked. A thin line of light spread across it like a spider web. Stay and keep the light. The glass shattered. The green flame surged outward, flooding the room in a burst of cold fire. Elliot screamed, shielding his face, but it wasn't heat he felt. It was pulling, like his skin, his breath, his very thoughts were being dragged out of him. He stumbled forward, reaching for the door, but his hand passed through the handle like smoke. The air thickened. His reflection flickered faintly in the glass of the broken window. Except it wasn't his reflection. The face looking back at him was Margaret's. "Now you'll understand," she whispered. "Now you'll keep them warm." The world blinked out. When the light returned, it was morning. A pickup truck rumbled down the snow-covered road toward Cold Hollow. The driver, a man in his 60s, slowed as he saw smoke rising from what looked like an old inn. The place had been empty for years, but now a faint orange glow burned inside. He parked, calling out, "Hello? Anyone here?" No answer. He stepped inside. The inn was silent, the air heavy with dust. The fireplace glowed weakly, a small flame flickering among the ashes. On the counter lay a camera, a recorder, and a photograph. The photo showed a group of smiling people holding lanterns. An old image, black and white, but someone new had been added to it. A young man stood among them, smiling faintly. His eyes were tired, but his expression calm. Underneath, in neat handwriting, someone had written, "Lantern Festival, Cold Hollow, 2025. The driver frowned, setting the picture down. He turned to leave, then stopped. The bell tolled once in the distance. He looked toward the window. Outside, faint in the daylight, a row of lanterns swayed gently in the cold wind, and behind one of them, for just a second, he thought he saw a face, young, weary, and burning with green light.
Please like and subscribe channel Fear Frequency for more horror stories. Thank you.